Hey guys, welcome back. Lesson 2 for the girl with the red slippers. Let's recall about these similar stories with different lands, okay? People around the world love listening to and telling stories. And some of the stories told around the world are quite similar to each other, even though the stories originated in different places around the world. Although the variations come from different countries or lands, the characters have similar adventures and face similar conflicts or problems. So let's review what we've learned already, okay? What was the name of the fairy tale we listened to in the previous read aloud? You're right, it was Cinderella. Good. Do you remember what country or land the story of Cinderella originated? Came from France. France. Who were the main characters in that read aloud? Well, we know there was Cinderella, the stepmom, and the two stepsisters, the fairy godmother, and the prince. Good job. What about the setting of Cinderella? Where did the story take place? It took place at Cinderella's home and the castle, didn't it? Good job, guys. What happened to Cinderella at the end of the story? Oh, she married the prince. She had a fairy tale ending. Great. So do you know if Cinderella is nonfiction, which means it's true, or is it fiction? It's a fiction story, isn't it? Because pumpkins can't really be turned into coaches and mice can't be turned into people, right? Good. All right. So today, our story that we're reading originated in a country called Egypt many, many years ago. And we're going to look on the continent of Africa here in a second, and I'm going to show you where it is located. So we're going to listen carefully to the girl with the red slippers to see how today's story is similar and different to the story we heard in the previous lesson. So let me share my screen with you. All right, so the girl with the red slippers. So our vocabulary words that we're going to see in this story is cautiously, meaning carefully avoiding danger or risk. Mike cautiously carried the bucket of water so he wouldn't spill it. Our next vocabulary word, preferred, liked something better than something else. Kara preferred to walk to school rather than take the bus. She loved being out in the fresh air and the sunshine every morning. Our next vocabulary word, revived, became strong, healthy, or active again. Bart felt revived when he drank a big glass of water after playing in the hot sun. Our next vocabulary word, scoured, searched carefully and thoroughly. We scoured our room for the missing earring, turning over chairs and tables in the search. Our next vocabulary, setting, where a story takes place. The setting of the story about students might be in a school. So where are we? Here's our map. And if you see the little red area here on our map, that is Egypt, and it is a part of the African continent. Remember, we live over here in North America, and across the Atlantic Ocean right there is Africa. Africa is right here, and Egypt is right here. So this is where our story originates from today, is Egypt. A long time ago In ancient Egypt, there lived a beautiful young girl named Rodolphus. Rodolphus was a slave. Now, Rodolphus was forced to work without pay and could not do what she liked. She had been born in Greece, but had been kidnapped by pirates. The pirates had sold the young girl to a rich Egyptian merchant. Rodolphus now worked as a servant in his house. Because Rodolphus was from another land, she did not look like the other servants or her master. Whereas they had dark hair and dark eyes, she had golden curls and green eyes. No amount of brushing would straighten those curls. The other servants teased Rodolphus. They also made her work even harder than they did. They had to get up before the sun rose. She had to work while the stars twinkled in the night sky. She cleaned her master's house. She baked bread. She washed her master's clothes. She sewed. She even tended to the garden. Rodolphus lived a lonely life. The others wanted nothing to do with her, and her master, though kind, spent his time either sleeping in the warm sunshine or conducting business. Time the animals became her friends. Rodolphus chatted with the birds that nested in the lemon and lime trees that she tended. She told her truths to the great white egrets, and she teased the red-tailed dragonflies. Now, which person do you think is Rodolphus based on the way she's described in this story? Think about the details and information in this story. Who does she remind you of? You're right. She reminds me of Cinderella, doesn't she? Having to do all the work all the time and talking to the animals? Yes. Well, however, though, her best friend in the whole world was a hippopotamus. Now, a hippopotamus is a large animal with an extremely large head and a mouth that spends most of its time in water, but they are also known as hippos. Whenever she went to the Nile River to wash her master's clothes, one particular hippo would come to the edge of the river. It would wallow in the water near her and keep her company while she worked. The hippo would look at her with its big round eyes. Its ears would flicker whenever she spoke, and sometimes they would play together. Rodolphus would splash water in the hippo's direction. The hippo would sink down under the water and then reappear close by. One day, while picking lemons from the lemon trees in the garden, Rodolphus heard music coming from her master's house. She placed her basket on the ground and began to dance to the music. She moved gracefully like a ballerina. Rodolphus danced in the warm sunshine, and as she danced, her master woke up from a long nap. As he stretched and yawned, he looked around the garden. He spotted Rodolphus dancing to the music. Rodolphus moved so elegantly that her master watched her for quite some time. And after a while, he thought to himself that this beautiful young girl who danced like a butterfly deserved some elegant shoes to adorn her bare feet. So, how do you think a butterfly might dance? They might flap their wings a little bit. Yep. The next day, he went to his own shoemaker and asked him to make a pair of red silk dancing slippers. The soles of the slippers were to be made of the very finest leather. Several days later, the shoes arrived at Rodolphus's master's. He presented them to her as a gift. Rodolphus was speechless. Oh, look how pretty. Rodolphus loved her slippers. The other servants were jealous that she had been given such an exquisite gift. They treated her even more horribly than before. This made Rodolphus very sad, and whenever she could, she would cautiously sneak off into the garden, put on her red slippers, and dance. Now, cautiously means carefully avoiding danger or risk. Why did Rodolphus have to cautiously sneak off to dance? Probably because she was supposed to be working, huh? She didn't want nobody to know that she was dancing instead of working. Quite often, she danced at night beneath the sparkling stars when everyone else was asleep. So, Who have we met so far in our lesson? We've met Rodolphus and the master and the servant girls, the other servant girls. Good. What gift does Rodolphus receive? She receives those red shoes, doesn't she? How do the other servants treat Rodolphus after she receives this gift? They treat her horribly, don't they? They treat her more so than they did before. Well, one day Rodolphus' master was informed that the Pharaoh Amasis had decided to hold a grand banquet at his royal palace in Memphis. All of his subjects were invited, even the servants. Now, the Pharaoh was the leader of the ancient Egypt, similar to a king, but the Pharaoh had servants to do things for him, just like a king. A banquet is a party with a fancy dinner. Rodolphus was so excited, however, she quickly learned that the other servants had no intention of letting her go. They didn't want to let Rodolphus go to the banquet. Instead, they gave her piles of laundry to do. They warned her that it better all be done by the time they returned. And as the servants prepared to depart, Rodolphus carried the huge pile of laundry down to the river. Rodolphus worked for several hours washing and scrubbing the clothes. Her faithful friend the hippo kept her company. The hippo always cheered up Rodolphus, and so after a while, Rodolphus' spirits were revived and she began to play with the hippo. Now the word revived means refreshed. It means she felt better. As Rodolphus cheerfully splashed the hippo, it suddenly moved to duck down beneath the water. Here the word duck means lift the head quickly to avoid being splashed. The word duck also has other meanings, like the word duck can mean a bird that swims and quacks. Then it reappeared quite suddenly right beside Rodolphus. As the hippo lifted its large head, it created a wave of water that cascaded down upon Rodolphus. She was drenched. So too were her beautiful slippers. Rodolphus sighed and scratched the hippo's head. Then she took off her slippers, placed them on a rock to dry, and after that she continued with her work. She did not even stop to eat. After a long while, Rodolphus finished washing all her clothes. By now her back and arms were aching, but she was happy to be done. Just as she was about to put on her red slippers, she heard the flapping of wings. In an instant, one of her slippers was gone. From out of the darkening sky, a falcon had swooped down and stolen it. Now, a falcon is a type of bird that can fly very fast. This gasped aloud. She was certain that the falcon was actually the god Horus. Horus is the sky god in the ancient Egypt religion. It was a something, but of what she did not know. There was nothing Rodolphus could do. She put on her one remaining slipper in her pocket and returned to her master's house in her feet. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, an enormous crowd had gathered. The crowd was enjoying the festivities. Pharaoh Amasis looked on from his raised throne in the banquet hall. Although he was happy to see his subjects enjoying themselves, he preferred to go hunting. Amasis liked hunting more than he liked parties. As Amasis did not have a wife or children, he spent most of his spare time hunting with his friends. As the day wore on, Amasis grew restless. He was just about to sneak away from the banquet when a great falcon swooped down and dropped a small red slipper at his feet. Now, swooped means to fall down real sharp. Amasis picked up the small slipper and stared at it. He was certain that the god Horus had sent him a message. Amos thought for a while. Then he summoned his advisors. He had decided that the god Horus was telling him that the owner of the red slipper would be his wife. The banquet was halted, and an announcement was made that the Pharaoh himself would search the land for the owner of the red slipper. The guests slowly began to leave. Now, Rodolphus' master had already left the palace. He had gone off to take care of some business, and so he had not heard the announcement. His servants, however, had. Together, they decided that they would not breathe a word to Rodolphus. As weeks went by, the Pharaoh scoured the land for his future wife. He searched by land and by water, but he was unsuccessful. At last his search brought him by royal barge to a region in the northern part of the kingdom. Rodolphus was washing clothes in the river as the royal barge appeared in the distance. The other servants saw it too and knew immediately what it meant. And as the barge neared the bank of the river, the royal trumpeters sounded the Pharaoh's arrival. Immediately the servants ordered Rodolphus to hide herself in the reeds as she was. They told her, too lowly a servant to be in the presence of a Pharaoh. Now the other servants tell Rodolphus that she is not important enough to meet the Pharaoh. That's why they wanted her to hide in the reeds. With the red slipper in one hand, Amos stepped off the royal barge. Upon seeing the slipper, the female servants elbowed each other out of the way, all wanting to be the first to try it on. As this was happening, Rodolphus peeked out from the reeds. She wanted to see the Pharaoh's face, and as she peeked out, Amos spotted her. He stared at the beautiful girl for several moments, and Rodolphus's heart skipped a beat. Amos asked Rodolphus to step forward, and then he placed her tiny foot inside the red slipper. As he did so, it was clear to all that he was the owner of the slipper. The other servants were horrified that she would be the Pharaoh's queen, but the master gave his blessing. Together, Amos and Rodolphus sailed away on the royal barge with its purple sails fluttering in the gentle breeze that blew across the Nile River. Behind the barge swam Rodolphus's best friend and honored wedding guest. And who would that be? The hippo. So, excuse me, how is Rodolphus treated by the other servants here in this story? Oh yeah, she's treated poorly by the servants, isn't she? She's made to do all the work. And who does that sound like? Sounds like the stepsisters in Cinderella, because they make Cinderella do all the work too, don't they? What gift does the master give Rodolphus? The red dancing shoes. Good. What must Rodolphus do while the others attend the banquet? She's having to wash clothes, isn't she? She has to do all that laundry, and she doesn't get to go have fun. What animal takes Rodolphus's slipper? Oh, you're right, the falcon. A falcon comes down and gets it. Where does the falcon take the slipper? Back to the Pharaoh. Good. How does the Pharaoh realize that Rodolphus is the owner of the red slipper? What does he do? He goes looking for the right person that the shoe will fit, and he sees her in the reeds, and he tries on the slipper. Good. So can you see the similarities between Cinderella and Rodolphus? Yep. Me too, because both characters are kind and good, but they're treated poorly by the people around them. And in both stories, there's fancy parties, which the main characters can't go to. And both characters have shoes like the glass slipper in Cinderella and the red slipper in this one for Rodolphus. What about the differences, though? Think about the differences in this story. Well, Cinderella's treated poorly by her stepmother and stepsisters, whereas Rodolphus is treated unfairly by other servants. Cinderella marries the prince, while Rodolphus marries a pharaoh. And Cinderella, of course, had the glass slipper, where Rodolphus had the red silk slipper. And the countries are different too, because Cinderella originated in France, where Rodolphus, the red slippers, originated in Egypt. Good job, guys. Well, thanks for joining this lesson. I hope you really enjoyed it. And we will see you again next time.